You're listening to the Spandex Power Armour Podcast. Content warning. May contain early 90s Mark Hamill. Hello and welcome to the Spandex Power Armour Podcast. I'm Hypnopotamus Rex and joining me is Carmen Ranger. My man, how are you doing?
I'm doing. How's you doing?
I'm incredibly hungover, thank you very much. This episode we are supposed to be talking about the Guyver films, but, you know, I'm just way too out of it because I pounded way too many margaritas last night. So, yeah, this podcast is cancelled. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, whatever. Have a nice day. Gotcha.
Yeah, as my colleague mentioned, we're talking about the Guyver movies. I love these things, even if they're not particularly well known anymore or liked either. They are an absolute joy for me in different ways. I've got a funny kind of anecdote regarding the Guyver. I work with a guy whose surname is Guyver, and he much prefers it when people call him Guyver. He does not know about this manga. He now knows about it after I mentioned it to him. But by default, I only ever call him by his first name, even though he prefers his surname, because that little nugget in my mind dedicated to remembering the sound of Guyver is so preoccupied with a bioweapon manga that I can't associate it with my with this lovely guy I work with who's just really nice, and I've never seen him decapitate a monster once.
Well, that's disappointing. So for those listening who aren't aware of the Guyver, please fill us in on what it is.
So you like Kamen Rider, right?
Yeah.
Imagine that, but without all the hokiness of old Showa stuff and an overarching plot and gore. And there you go. That's basically it. It was it's a manga from the 80s. It's still going on today, despite the fact that it's been going on for like 40-odd years now, because the author keeps going on hiatus due to, I think it's health complications, unfortunately. And last I checked, I think it was said that he just refuses to use any assistance, and so he'll just periodically go on hiatus for years on end, and then come back with a chapter or so, and then go back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So what's the plot of the Guyver? What exactly is going on in this universe that makes it the action-packed body horror romp that you love so much?
So the basic premise is this kid comes across a fruit roll-up with his friend in the forest. He picks it up and it slaps itself inside of him, and now he can kill things real good, and monsters attack him and he kills them real good. And then this big shadowy organization wants the fruit roll-up that he's got because it's so juicy, and he goes on the run with all the friends who've been implicated in this conspiracy, and along the way he kills people real good. That's a story.
Okay. Would you say that the real Guyver is the body count we made along the way?
I'm deliberately underselling it. It's fantastic. I've not read much of the manga yet. I have watched the 2005, I think it is, anime, which gets up to the bit where Guyver Gigantic is introduced. And to basically explain what that is, Guyver Gigantic is power armor for power armor.
Okay.
It's amazing. It's dumb as hell. And then it just ends. Unfortunately, because I don't even think that they caught up to the manga by that point. But they get to this point where the bad guys have won. The world, they've openly taken over the world, and the heroes are all reunited and they're able to plan like a counteroffensive. But the bad guys have still won. And I don't dislike that, but knowing that that's not how the story is meant to end just bugs me a little bit. But from now on, whenever I refer to quote unquote the original, I'm referring to the anime, which follows the original manga a lot more closely than the previous anime or the OVA, with a few details that have been switched around a little bit. Guyver 2 lasts a lot longer than he does in the manga, but it's for the most part pretty accurate. Speaking of the manga, the only way to get it in the West is either track down some 90s releases of it from, I think it was Viz who did that release, and then stopped and didn't do any more. Or you could find the fan group that was doing it, and I'm not sure if they're still doing it, but for a while they were making it so that to get their translations of it, you had to physically buy a release of it from Japan and then prove it to them, and then they would not sell you, they would send you the fanlation of it.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
I've never seen a group do that before.
Yeah, it's bizarre. It's not. They're not even making money off of it. I think it's meant to be so that the original author gets money from it. What if you get it from a secondary seller? That money's not going to him. Either way, I mean, people leak it anyway. I'm not even sure if that group is still the primary ones doing the Guyver. Last I checked on MangaDex. They're pretty up to date on it, so I'm definitely going to read some because I love me some Guyver, and I want to know where the story progresses beyond Guyver Gigantic. Damn it! I want to see how they win. I want to see them beat people.
Okay, so the premise for this is that mankind were initially created as a bioweapon, weren't they? And so the eponymous Guyver is actually a suit of power armor for humans, isn't it? They're supposed to be used in some sort of alien war initially, right?
Not quite. The humans are a bioweapon created by these ancient aliens who came down to Earth, and for millions upon millions and millions of years have been kind of influencing how life has developed on Earth and engineering extinction events when they're not happy with it.
Do you think they arranged 2020?
Oh, that would explain so much. They're named after Uranus, Uranus. Bum. I hate that planet's name.
Is this what we've become? Is it now just butt jokes?
Yes, butt jokes.
In the last episode, we were making genital references. We're just going through everything. We're 6.
Yep.
And yeah, butts are funny.
So they're named after Uranus, or Uranus, however you want to pronounce it. Isn't the Roman analogy Saturn? No, not Saturn, is it?
My knowledge of Roman pantheons isn't the best, unfortunately.
I know the Greek one more than the Roman, whatever. Who's the father of Kronos, who is the namesake of the evil organization in this. They created mankind as a bioweapon, and they left kind of dormant instructions in our DNA that can be triggered to create different kinds of monsters called the zoonoids. And then one of them decided, hey, you know what would be pretty cool? We put one of these monkeys in our special protective suit. That'd be a bit of a laugh, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it, lads? Eh? And so they put a monkey in their Guyver suits. They weren't called Guyver suits up until then because Guyver in their language means out of control. And the suit, the G unit, made it so that the aliens could no longer kind of psychically control the human it had bonded to, and it ended up just, I think it destroyed one of the ships, and after they managed to get it off with this weapon that comes into play later on in the series, they just kind of wrote Earth off as a bit of a mistake and left.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I love it. I absolutely adore that their millennia-long plans were ruined because one of them decided to put a monkey in a suit.
So tell me more about the zoonoids, because that's a really funky name for something. The effort put into the suits for the zoonoids in the Guyver films are incredible. We'll get to that in a bit. But yeah, what exactly are these monsters?
They're basically a form that humans can be transmuted into to grant them different kinds of abilities. They range from just normal punchy, slashy, bitey, big, strong monster man thing to having like biolasers in the shoulders and like acidic enzymes that they can. You get some real crazy ones, and they can be augmented into hyper zoonoids, and then you get zoolords on top of that. And then you get the big boss Zoolord, who's even more powerful than that. There's a whole kind of tier, kind of hierarchy to them all. And anything lower than the others can be psychically controlled by them. They're basically just the monsters of the week. And the less powerful ones stand-ins for the mooks as well.
So enough about the backstory to Scientology, let's get into the Guyver. So, the first film. I remember watching this with you. It was one Halloween party, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. That was my choice.
Yes, we could tell. Alongside... Oh, we also watched Reanimator then, didn't we?
Hell yes, we did.
Coincidentally,
Evil Dead
both
2.
starring Jeffrey Combs.
Yes, Jeffrey Combs is the true star of this movie.
Yes, it's a shame he's only there, in the end, literally as a character called Dr. East.
Dr. East.
And I'm like, yeah, okay.
Thanks, Brian Usner. Thank you.
I can appreciate why they did the reference, but he kind of felt a bit unnecessary there. Fight me. Give me some more reasons to use Jeffrey Combs. Put him in a Guyver. I want a manlet Guyver.
Look, at that point in the movie, anything goes. Really, it just the tone in this movie is all over the. No, actually, it's not all over the place. It's pretty consistent, and that consistency is camp. And usually, I enjoy a bit of camp. I have no issue with it. But it's when it's at the detriment of the source material, because the original Guyver is quite dark. There's a bit where the main hero gets half his skull and brain ripped out by a zoonoid that had been made out of his father, and so the suit takes over and makes him kill his father. And once his brain's grown back, he has a bit of a crisis because he's torn his dad in half. Again, like I said, tonally very different to the original. So Jeffrey Combs cameo, yeah, at this point it may as well happen.
The only way they could do it is a little camp, because frankly, it's a big story. It's a story that, in order to get the full scope of it, you'd need a big budget. And the problem with these films is they operated on a smaller budget, but they allocated the budget very well. They put everything into the suit design, and their attempt at storytelling did work for a standalone pair of films, but it's just an odd story to try and make a proper movie out of. The first one began with an opening crawl that straight up said, aliens, zoonoids, these are the bad guys. We can't really show any of this, but here's some text on a screen. We're going to Star Wars it.
It's an interesting choice to have a text crawl in a movie ostensibly starring Mark Hamill. I say ostensibly because they really do push him on the poster. I completely forgot he was in that
movie.
I didn't. The man turns into a cockroach at the end. It's very hard to forget that. So, yeah, you mentioned the budget of this movie. I know exactly how much it cost. $3 million. Or in today's money, that is $5,874,799.11.
Good to see that you factored the sense into it.
Now, for contrast, an episode of Big Bang Theory costs $9 million.
Bazinga. That is incredible. I mean, it's a lot of money for us, but from a film production standpoint, that's a very tiny budget for tokusatsu. Especially when the main appeal of these adaptations is the practical effects. It's the suit design.
True, but so the directors of this movie were Screaming Mad George. That's his name. And Steve Wang.
Screaming Mad George.
Yeah, the man's name is Screaming Mad George. This was an intentional choice on his part. His parents weren't unusually cruel, don't worry.
I'm just curious now. Is this something that he'd actually changed his name to?
Oh, yes.
So his surname is George and his first name is Screaming Mad?
Yes. No, his first name is Screaming, his middle name is Mad, and his surname is George.
Middle name, okay.
He was born Joji Tani. He was from Osaka. He named himself George to stand out in Japan, and then he moved to the United States and realized, oh no, there are multiple Georges now. And so he named himself Screaming Mad to differentiate himself from all the other Georges.
I like how if you don't factor in the middle name, you get Screaming George. And that is just an amazing name. Like, just, how do they... I mean, surely they'd speak to him, they'd address him by... Surely they'd address him by his surname, so they would just call him George.
If you have renamed yourself Screaming Mad George, there is no way that you're not insisting on people refer to you by your full title.
Screaming Mad George. I'm just impressed at the balls on him for doing that. I can understand changing his name to a more Western one to stand out in Japan, but just Screaming Mad George. How are you going to get a normal job? Like, you're going to need a decent background in something to have that experience to be able to say, yeah, I'm just going to change my name to Screaming Mad George, and my career is not going to suffer from this.
No, you're absolutely right. He did. He has a good background in special effects and makeup. He was involved in Big Trouble in Little China, Predator, Nightmare on Elm Street 3 and 4, Arena, Society, Bride of Reanimator, Silent Night, Deadly Night 4, Freaks, Children of the Corn 3, Space Truckers, Progeny, Faust, Love of the Damned, nice, and Beyond Reanimator.
Okay, so a lot of involvement with Jeffrey Combs projects.
Steve Wang directed Rollerblade 2, Kung Fu Rascals, Guyver and Guyver 2, Drive, not that Drive, a few episodes of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, Kung Pao Enter the Fist as second unit director, and Kamen Rider Dragon Knight.
Oh,
he was also
wow.
He was also the producer on Dragon Knight and Dark Hero.
Okay, that's kind of impressive for Screaming Mad Wang.
Yeah, so that's a team. It was also produced by Brian Usner, hence the camp and the Reanimator influences. Bless that insane man. The film stars, and I say stars because he gets top billing, Mark Hamill as CIA agent man. I refuse to learn his name because he's played by Mark Hamill, so he's just Mark Hamill to me.
Oh yeah, if you've got Mark Hamill in it, you've got to add him as the main cell. I wonder how much he made from that film. He must have been paid a decent chunk of that budget.
I wouldn't say so. This isn't modern Mark Hamill we're talking about. This is 90s Mark Hamill. This is before Batman the Animated Series. This is after Star Wars is all over.
So he's trying to take whatever scraps of work he can find.
This is take what you can get, Mark Hamill.
Sort of in the middle of washing up, unfortunately.
Yeah. It also stars Vivian Wu as Mizki. Not Mizuki. Mizki. Anytime this particular version of the character's name is spelt, it's Mizky. Completely missing out the U and the I. It just bugs me as all. So Mizki, Jack Armstrong plays Sean Barker, our version of Sho Fukamachi or the Guyver. David Gale is our villain, and my word, is he perfect in this movie. He was also the villain in Reanimator.
That's quite insane, the number of comparisons we're getting here.
Yeah, and Michael Berryman is Liska.
Oh, I love Michael Berryman.
I adore Michael Berryman, and the character he plays is nothing like the original counterpart, but he is so much fun. Both he and David Gale are nothing like... Well, none of these characters are like the original versions. But David Gale and Michael Berryman are fun to watch, and none of the others are.
For those who aren't aware, Michael Berryman is an actor who is known for his unique anatomy, so it's some sort of condition where he's very tall, has a very unique face, and has no hair, teeth, or... Did he have fingernails?
No fingernails.
No fingernails. So, yeah, he was very much typecast as monstrous figures. He was in The Hills Have Eyes. He's one of those people where you can recognize him immediately. And isn't it that he actually enjoys being cast in those roles?
It would be a bit sad if he didn't.
Man. I mean, I'm looking at his IMDb page now, and he's doing some stuff that's in production, just about finishing it. So, yeah, it's good to see that he's getting work, and I mean, it is a very unique gimmick, that sort of appearance, so it definitely guarantees him work.
Yeah, when you have such a interesting and unique appearance, you kind of can't help but get work, you know? It's
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Look
good
at
for him.
Doug Jones.
He's made it work. Yeah, Doug Jones. That's a lanky man.
Yeah, he has made a lot of money from his lank and ability to act in suits in movies where he doesn't actually speak the language, and also to not be able to see. So the man's great. We need Doug Jones in a Guyver film.
I'd be down to climb with that. Needless to say, other than a few handfuls, no one in this movie has done really much. I checked out the IMDb page of Jack Armstrong, and it's it's just like one episode appearances on different TV shows.
Wow.
Yeah. He doesn't even have a Wikipedia page. I had to go on IMDb.
He didn't even get into the second movie. He was replaced by David Hayter.
Oh, they should have gone with David Hayter to begin with. But more on that when we talk about the second movie. So the first movie it starts off fairly decently. I mean, so the opening for the Guyver is basically a scientist or someone from Kronos has escaped with a or multiple Guyver units. It's one in this version. In the original, it was 3. So he escapes with them, trying to get them to. In the movie, he's trying to get them to the CIA so they can investigate and stuff like that. And he's being pursued by Kronos. Obviously, wants the Guyver units back because they're super powerful. They're aware from what alien stuff they've dug up what the dealio is with them, and they want to use them for their own machinations. And once he's lost the units and has been killed, that's when Sean comes into the picture and accidentally gets bonded to it and becomes the Guyver and starts, killing people real good.
Killing people real good.
In the original, Kronos employs a crack team of highly trained operatives who are all able to turn into horrible, grotesque monsters and are basically living weapons. In the movie, they have goons. And there is a big difference between mooks and goons. Mooks can be professionals. The thing that makes them a mook is the large quantities and relative weakness compared to the hero. Goons, on the other hand, are goofy and ineffective.
You would not trust
weakness.
superpowers to a goon.
Yes. So you got a goon squad led by Michael Berryman's Liska, who in the original was an investigator from the Kronos head offices who would oversee transport of sensitive materials and would also investigate and inspect different branches of Kronos to make sure they're up to scratch. He actually became Guyver 2 briefly, but because that particular Guyver unit was damaged, it ate him.
Metal.
Yeah, the little the silver glowing orb on the forehead is the control metal. And not only does that allow the G unit to take shape as a Guyver suit, it also stops the Guyver from eating its host.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a thing that is a risk. Both
That's morbid.
Both the original Guyver 2 and the OVA exclusive female Guyver 2 get eaten. As a side note, if you don't like tentacles, don't watch the OVA because her transformation sequence, it's pretty explicit that she gets tentacles up the butt.
Lovely.
Oh yeah,
this is turning into a If you have a bunch of freaky fetishes, watch the anime.
Yeah.
If you like Michael Berryman, watch the movies. He's better than any porn. I really liked him in that role. He could do imposing because he has that kind of figure, and the goons themselves were just fairly generic. I mean, you have. My God, I can't remember them. All I remember is there's a girl
you have
one.
Fat man, you have black man.
Yeah, I like how. Oh man, but the token black guy though.
Are we talking about Minstrel Gremlin?
Yes, we're talking about the Minstrel Gremlin Zoanoid.
Yeah, so imagine a gremlin from Gremlins, but you give him really big lips, and he's voiced by a black man in monster form, and his human form is black, and he raps. And he wears an Ankh chain around his neck, and he also has a pendant with a picture of Africa on it in like red, yellow, and black and green. It's
the most beautiful example of a stereotype. I mean, I can understand everything else as like, yeah, okay, fine. Look, he's black, but the great big old pair of lips.
Yeah.
The massive lips that just make you think, hang on, are you sure this isn't racist? Is that so in the manga? No, is there a big old racist stereotype Zoanoid?
I always try to assume the best of people, especially in situations like this. I always try to assume ignorance rather than malice. But my goodness, it's interesting. Very interesting that they chose to go for big lips on the black one. They have a very fat man who is in it, and his monster form isn't that fat. Side note, he's also played by the guy who voiced Skybite in the English dub of Transformers Robots in Disguise. That's got nothing to do with much of anything, but I really like Skybite. Correction, I love Skybite. He's a good boy, he writes haikus, and he doesn't deserve to be beholden to Megatron.
But does he have a great big pair of lips?
No, he's a great big heart.
It's not enough, you gotta have the big racist lips to be featured on this podcast. To hell with your Skybite.
Yeah, that's that tangent. It would have been weird if we didn't mention it because it's just so egregious. If you have watched this movie,
it's an elephant in the room for sure.
It's right there. You can't not notice it.
I can see what you mean now about the camp focus for this.
Yes, he raps. He doesn't even rap. He just says verses. And there's this bit where they're chasing our protagonists, and he just stumbles into a filming location, and they treat him like he's the monster, and then they just do nothing with it, and they move on.
Wow. I mean, yeah, you've really got to have some light-hearted moments in this film, because it can get dark. It has a lot of body horror in it. You see Mark Hamill turn into a cockroach monster.
Yes, I really don't like that transformation sequence, actually, because it plays on a very irrational, real fear of mine of being transformed into something grotesque. That's why I can't watch and won't watch Human Centipede or even Tusk.
Man.
Yeah.
I was going to make a Kafka reference because obviously there's that element of it. But
the cockroach.
Yeah.
That's a thing that genuinely bothers me and gets under my skin. I cannot and will not. Fly 2 as well, the ending for that, I despise that. The Guyver is the only film I can tolerate it in because it's Mark Hamill that it's happening to, and of all the other stuff that's happened in this movie kind of offsets that particular. It doesn't even contribute to the plot any. There's no fight scene where Sean is like, no, Mark Hamill, I won't fight you. You've been a supporting character throughout this film that I'm meant to care about. I will not fight you. He's just forced to transform. And then dies immediately.
Because he wasn't in the vat for very long.
Yes. I mean, fine. But at the same time, why waste the budget on it?
Yeah, they made that monster specifically just for that scene. They even had a Mark Hamill face for it. Like the eyes and the upper part of the nose. Just to add to the body horror, just to make it seem like there's still a bit of him there. And it's morbid as hell. It's also featured in the second film as like a background zoonoid and a flashback, isn't it?
So yeah, the plot for this movie is not particularly in-depth. Sean Barker is just your average milquetoast, karate-learning man-child who wants... I don't know if he and Mizki are actually dating or if he just wants to date her. They never really confirm either way. They never act like they're actively dating throughout this movie. Her father is a scientist who escaped and smuggled the G unit out and then got killed. Kronos figures out that she's involved, so they send zoonoids to kidnap her. By this point, Sean has got the Guyver unit embedded in him. He fights a street gang who act like a person who has never seen a street gang thinks a street gang acts.
It's the whitest thing.
Barely any of them are actually white. There's an Asian one, there's a Hispanic one. I think one of them's white.
Well, I mean, it's the whitest concept for a gang.
Yes.
Especially in the 90s. It's like saying that rap is a personality trait. Or giving a zoonoid a great big pair of minstrel lips. So I'm surprised that he didn't try and eat a watermelon while transformed. Let's just make it even more racist. Come on.
You see, that's why I think this was an act of ignorance rather than malice. There's a bit right at the end between that particular monster and a recurring character who is played by a black actor, and they're stood next to each other. When I'm watching the ending of this movie, I'm just thinking to myself, how does that actor feel about being stood next to this? Like he has to realize what it's a caricature of. How does he?
Did he ever raise a complaint about it and just say, "Hang on, isn't this a little bit offensive?"
Yeah.
Don't worry, we're two white guys on the internet. Let's be offended for you. This is
I'm
now
not
a social
offended.
justice
I'm just
podcast.
confused.
Fine, I'll be offended for your sake as well.
Thank you, White Knight.
You're welcome.
So the plot is not in depth. Basically, an issue. The biggest issue with this is that Sean Barker is a very, he's not a very I was about to say progressive, but that's got different connotations these days. He doesn't progress the plot. Basically, he does not.
Proactive.
He is not the drive. Yeah, proactive. That's it. Yeah, he does not. He doesn't drive things forward. He reacts to what is going on around him. Other people drive it forward. He just kind of bumbles and bimbles along with the wind until he bimbles into a fight and gets his control metal ripped out and dies. And then
That's always the problem with superhero films, though, in that there's always the awkward beginning, which I kind of hate. It's like I didn't really enjoy Iron Man that much because a lot of it was all just intro. It was all just like, okay, I want to see the hero doing cool things. I don't really care about like how they're getting on and learning stuff. I'm like, no, I just give me some more action. I don't want this rubbish about them trying to figure out their powers. No, just give me the action. Let them be badass.
Okay, in principle, I do agree with you, but specifically for Iron Man, I really liked that kind of build-up bit to it. I agree that it is all build-up, but at least the stuff in the cave is, where he builds his suit with a box of scraps.
Oh, that's an impressive scene.
Yeah, that's a really nice sequence. I do get what you mean. Like every Spider-Man reboot has that kind of, except for the new one. Actually, they just completely forego that. Fantastic Four, yeah.
For Iron Man, it took 3 films to get a proper Iron Man film. The first one was like, hey, look, this is going to be our startup of the cinematic universe. The sequel was just like, okay, we're biding some more time till Iron Man 3. Then we finally had Iron Man 3.
And then at the end of that, he decides, I'm going to be Iron Man, no more. And then Age of Ultron happened, and he's like, yeah, I'm Iron Man again.
I've never actually watched many films in the MCU. I think I watched Iron Man, that's about it.
I have seen most of them, and I like to kind of smugly guffaw at the MCU, but at the same time I have watched almost all of the films, so I don't really have much place to feel smug. I have contributed to this problem that we have now.
It depends if you've been buying a bunch of Funko Pops as well.
Disgusting. Don't speak that name in my house. Have you seen that behind-the-scenes picture from the latest Spider-Man film, where it's Samuel L. Jackson sat in front of a green screen holding a green screen gun, and then the comparison to the actual scene, and it's just him sat in front of a normal wall holding a normal tranquilizer gun?
What's the point?
So that they can rejigger all these bits and bobs that they filmed to suit any kind of scenario they may want. They don't make films, they assemble jigsaw puzzles, it seems.
Wow, I mean, is the gun changed for Chinese audiences? Is a pro-Xi Jinping poster on the wall there? Like, what is changed? That's crazy.
Oh, it's mad. And that's part of the reason why I prefer stuff like the Guyver over MCU films these days, because this film absolutely had heart poured into it. It might not be the best, but actual passion and hard work went into it. The suits look amazing. It's a suit. It's mainly the suits. The practical effects are fantastic in both of these movies, and they're clearly where most of the budget went.
Yeah, I've really got to appreciate the Guyver suit. It looks amazing, and you've shown me pictures of it from the manga, from the anime, and it looks 1-to-1. It's amazing.
Yeah, weirdly enough, in the first movie, the Guyver's crest is kind of, after its initial transformation, she kind of is flat against the head, but they fix that in the second one. That aside, though, it's shockingly kind of 1-to-1 with what the original design was, and it's bizarre to me that the Guyver in 1991 is the anime adaptation that manages to do that, and most others don't. The Fist of the North Star movie did a pretty accurate costume as well, but it's not a very hard costume to recreate. It's a leather jacket without sleeves and a pauldron and a pair of trousers.
You really can't fault the Guyver on its suit design. It's incredible, and even for the Zoanoid goons, you can tell there was effort put into it. They're capable of emoting, and it's amazing how much you can emote with a big old pair of racist lips.
Yeah.
I'm not letting that go. That's just, you reminded me of this before we started recording, and it just tickled me so much.
It's pretty out there. Obviously, some suits got more animatronics than others. Ramsey's one is just a weird elephant man thing, and he's just got a tiny trunk that moves up and down. Liska's has more going on with the lips and junk like that, and eyes, like he blinks and junk like that. It's neat. I like it. It looks like a giant Pachycephalosaurus. His girlfriend's monster form is just a demonic furry with boobs.
Yeah, I did notice the breast, and I'm thinking,
I found it hard to notice anything.
You got to point out that this one is female. I'm like, it's monsters, dude. You don't really need it. What are they going to do with the breast? What's a zoonoid going to do with breasts? You going to kill someone with it?
I'm impressed that they didn't make her the sexy one. Like, from a physique point of view, she's just as dumpy as all the others. They just gave her boobs as well.
That's because Berryman's the sexy one.
Yeah.
Actually, the way the light shines off his head.
Yeah, we love you, Michael Berryman.
I think he was in Star Trek: The Next Generation. He was in one episode. He was the first Bolian on screen.
Oh, really? Wow, really?
He loved the makeup so much that he drove home after shooting, wearing it.
Oh.
I think he was picking up his girlfriend's kid from school or something, and he was stopped by the police, and he was just going like, I've got to go to the mothership.
That's why Blue Man Group only has 3 members. So yeah, look, if it sounds like we're talking more about things about the film rather than the film itself, it's that the film doesn't really have much going for it.
Oh, it's unimpressive. It's just
in terms
fairly
of acting,
generic
absolutely.
action superhero thing.
Yes.
But the elements of the film are great. The suits are amazing. The same is true for the sequel. Even more effort's put into the suits there. There's so much effort put into one suit that can smirk. It's only done like once, but there is a zoonoid suit that can smirk. It's a wonder of puppetry, and I'm glad they allocated the budget to the right parts of both films.
That's what happens when your director is also a special effects director.
And is also named Screaming Mad George.
Actually, Screaming Mad George didn't have anything to do with Guyver 2. It was all Steve Wang.
Ah, so it was Screaming Mad Wang
baby.
that did the sequel.
Yeah, he produced and directed that one. Can I talk about David Gale for a bit?
Go ahead.
I love David Gale as a villain. He is just so much fun to watch. He is just so creepy and evil, and he's so much fun. I love him in Reanimator. It's the first thing I saw him in, and that has kind of coloured my perception on anything he could ever do again, ever. And he absolutely lives up to it in Guyver. There's a bit where he's chastising Liska, Michael Berryman's character, and because he's a zoolord, and so he can control zoonoids. So he makes Liska beat himself up, and then threatens to make him slap himself into oblivion if he fails again. And the delivery is just so amazing. The Guyver unit is swapped out for a toaster in one scene, and when it's brought back to him, it's presented to him because Liska didn't check first before handing it over. And then the next time we see him, he's got the toaster on his desk, and a toast pops out when the scene's over and it's burned, and he just completely loses it. David Gale is amazing and weirdly creepy and rapey in this movie as well. Like he's like that in Reanimate. He's very much like... No, he's not even weirdly. He's overtly rapey in that movie.
Oh, yeah. I think you could tell he had fun in Reanimator doing that sort of villain role. It's really, really quite scary the way he does it, but he also does it campy. That's the thing. He can do campy and terrifying at the same time.
So he plays a character called Fulton Balkus, who is in the original, but the original is called Barkus rather than Balkus, and is one of the kind of oldest of the Zoolords, and has the most powerful kind of psychic abilities and junk like that. And so the bits in it where his forehead opens up and you get like this little red thing in there pulsating when he uses mind control and junk, that's a thing in the original, but that's permanently out on Barkus. It's not his. It's not something that just pops out on occasion. Other than that, there is no similarity between the two of them. They're both Kronos higher ups, but Barkus doesn't transform into a giant dragon monster thing.
Well, that's a shame.
Yeah. Having said that, the giant dragon monster thing does look pretty good.
Oh yeah, you needed him as the proper final boss fight. Otherwise, it would just be a little boring, really, about Guyver versus Old Man.
His role has more in common with Richard Goat, which is another Zoalord who kind of has his own agenda going on and wants the Guyver unit for himself to become the most powerful and to overthrow the other Zoalords and Arkenfell, the main Zoalord. But you can't really do the kinds of superhero, supervillain fights that a Guyver versus a Zoalord kind of necessitates in 1991 on $3 million of budget in live action. So I think having a giant dragon monster was the most impressive that they could do realistically, at least from an immediate visually striking thing. The final fight in Guyver 2 is way more impressive from actual quality point of view, but when you see a giant dragon, you first think, oh hey, that's pretty impressive, that's a giant ass dragon, sick. One bad thing about this movie, I mean there are lots of bad things about this movie, but one thing that actively hurts it, like I mentioned, Sean is a very reactive protagonist, which can work in certain contexts, but in this one it doesn't. If you've been changed forever as kind of collateral damage in this conspiracy, you would want your character to be a bit more, I don't know, have a bit more to do, be a bit more active in their own story. But another thing that hinders, words do not come easily to me, unfortunately, which is weird considering I do a podcast. One thing that
It's fine.
One thing that hinders it is that he has no best friend character. In the original, he has a friend called Tetsuro, who is the brother of Mizuki, with a U, who is his love interest. And they go to investigate the noise in the woods, and that's when he gets the Guyver unit, and that's all that happens. And Tetsuro becomes his kind of confidant character. He's part of the science fiction club, so he uses his background in being well versed in sci-fi tropes to kind of roughly work out what might be going on. But he just gives Sho someone to talk to, someone to bounce things off of. And I don't know, it's more engaging when your protagonist has someone like a peer to talk to. Because in the movie, Mizuki, with no U, is barely a character. She exists for things to happen to, more so than Sean. Her father dies, she is kidnapped, she is held hostage, she is
every
terrorized
Hollywood
by
woman.
monsters. Yeah.
So her role is to get fridged.
Not quite, she doesn't die. But yeah, she's even less. She's got even less going on than Sean, and she's like the object of his desire. Like I said, it's not clear whether they're actually dating or not, but he's very clearly into her, and so his interactions are always kind of coloured by that, and his interactions with Mark Hamill, CIA agent, are kind of uneven as well, because he's a CIA agent and an adult, and Sean is meant to be like in college, I think, or something. Given casting practices, he may be in high school. We know how Power Rangers goes. So if he had a best friend character like Tetsuro to kind of talk things over through, I think it would have really helped his character a bit more. But no, he doesn't have that.
I think he needed a zany sidekick. That would be great. If we didn't already have a black stereotype in this film, I'd have suggested black sidekick, who reacts to everything like, what? Or just something to add some emotion to it. Or, just a zany sidekick, someone who just makes the quips in the background, because, it's just someone to bounce ideas off.
You're actively trying to make this film worse, thank you.
Yes, I am. Look, it's got really nice suit design and okay-ish fight scenes. That's all that we need. We don't really care about the people. The people are boring.
Yeah.
Except for, Messrs. Berryman, Combs, and all the other good boys. But, boring protagonist doesn't really register on the radar for me.
Yeah, this movie could have been amazing. but it wasn't, unfortunately. We can see how good it can be in the sequel. Like, it's got this really cool line, like, "I've been rejected by death." Like, that's a cool line. It's edgy, but it's cool as hell, and it does not deserve to be in this movie. It doesn't deserve to be spoken by Sean Whitebread Barker. Man, that guy is just blander than bland. It's like if God created a video game and you selected Caucasian, that would be your default, you know?
That's kind of a limitation of trying to localize and appeal to a Western audience. And if only they just added something to make him interesting.
Yes.
In the very least, the trauma from the first film made him interesting in the second.
Yes.
Gave him more of a fear of the Guyver than anything else. Just a bit of PTSD. That's the only character trait that a character like that can inherit.
He's not amazing in the original. He's still quite reactive there, but in that, he is a high school student who is kind of forced to run away from home, and is on the run quite a lot with his friends, and is fighting back against a multinational, centuries-old conspiracy. It makes sense for him to just kind of go with the flow in the original, because there are plenty of other people to compensate for him. In this, he doesn't lose his home. He's just, the whole thing takes place over the course of like a couple of days, and also he's an adult. I forgive Sho for being reactive and passive. I do not forgive that of Sean, because
The first name use is really lazy, isn't it? How do we westernize this?
Sean.
It's not even anything interesting, like Screaming Mad Sean.
I don't mind.
Now that would be fun.
I don't mind their attempts to westernize it too much. It's kind of a fact of life when adapting one thing from one country to another. It's fine. I didn't quite get on board with the whole whitewashing issue with Ghost in the Shell. I mean, even the original director of the movie came out and said that, you know, even her body that you see her in the anime isn't her original body. We don't know what her original sex or race was. I understand why people take issue with it, but when you are trying to translate a story from one culture to another, you will inevitably have to change some bits to make it an easier transition. Sure, like, you will get individuals who enjoy the original, but for a mass market release, you cannot blame the people holding the purse for wanting to try and play it as safe as possible. For example, Oldboy is a fantastic movie. It is an absolute work of art, and it is harrowing to watch. I like it, and I like its original Korean version. It's fine, but you can't blame producers for thinking, hang about, this movie ain't in English. Let's try making an American version of it. The result is bad. We all agree. The result is really bad and completely misses the point in a lot of places. It is, don't watch the American Oldboy. It's really terrible, really, really bad. But you can't blame them for thinking that might be a good idea. It worked quite well in Alita Battle Angel, but then again, that isn't a particularly culturally Japanese story. So it, actually, I'm trying to think of.
Still need to watch Alita.
Do it. It's amazing. I'm trying to think of any of the main characters that are Japanese. Oh, Daisuke Ido. Yeah.
I think the name would include you in there, but you never know. He could be Dutch.
I'm used to the films. He's called Dyson in that, in the English dub of the OVA. In the film, he's played by Christoph Waltz, who does a really good job, but he also has a rocket-powered sledgehammer. It's amazing.
Let's watch that instead of doing the Guyver.
Oh, we're definitely doing an episode on Alita. But that moment was when I realised, dang about this is a movie I can like. This is a movie I can get on board with. Rocket-powered sledgehammers.
That just reminds me of the absolute insanity of Metal Gear Rising.
Oh.
When you're making a product and they're just like, you know what, sod it, let's just do crazy. Let's grapple a Metal Gear Ray. Sod it. It's going to look cool, therefore it's going in.
Let's judo throw Metal Gear. Man, I love that game.
Absolutely crazy. I wish the Guyver films had enough budget to put some stupid scenes like that in. Just something naff. They did great with what they had. This is what I would like to change. 1, zany companion. So we've got someone for Sean Boring Face to bounce things off. And 2, stupid fight scenes. You can keep in the body horror and stuff, but I want something naff, not necessarily doing a judo throw on a giant robot, but something. I would like, what's crazy? Chucking a car at someone? A lorry? Like slicing a truck in half with those arm blades. That would be cool.
That'd be pretty sick.
Just something like that. Something that's like, you know what, let's just put it in because it looks cool. It's going to be silly as hell. Bollywood. I want a Bollywood version of the Guyver. That's what I want. I've now realised that. Bollywood is perfect for tokusatsu.
Yes, it is. So we've kind of exhausted the first Guyver. The second Guyver is way more fun. It is so much more satisfying to watch than the first one, because they actually tried. Brian Usner was not involved, so there was no kind of camp elements to it. Not that I've got anything against camp, but in this particular context, you kind of want something a bit more bittersweet and dark, considering that that's what Guyver's whole shtick is.
Yeah, they showed Sean as a more mature character who's sort of been traumatized by the events of the first film and isn't really too keen on what he is and has nightmares about it. And it's good that it's played straight. I did enjoy how it took itself very seriously, and I also like the fact that they spent all the budget on the suits, so they just filmed in the woods.
Yes.
And one cave set that's also used extensively.
They reused quite a few suits from the original, not glaringly so, but they also reference early on. You see a skull. There's very clearly Lisker's kind of model from the original, and then the Lisker model is revisited later on. So it's established that you can and will get duplicate Zoanoids. So that's pretty decently woven in as well. So they reuse suits. They film out in the woods quite a lot. They've only created 2 sets, I think, for this movie, which is the cave and the inside of the relic ship. And that the suits and the sets are absolutely where all the budget went, and they made a fantastic decision for that. Because there are long stretches in the original where they're just out in the open on the run, so it's not that out of the question for this whole adventure to take place in the middle of the woods in Utah.
I really appreciate the new suits in the second film. As I mentioned, there is one Zoanoid that smirks. There is so much puppetry going on, so they've properly rigged it up so that it can speak and it can emote, and it's just the fact that they made it smirk. I think when we were watching it, we had to go back to that scene just to keep seeing it.
Yeah.
We saw it a couple of times, and I think it only happens once.
Yes.
After he's done talking to Sean, and he just smirks at the end, and it's just a perfect way of getting that character's motive through as the schemer.
It elevates it from a man in a rubber suit to an actual character. Even if it's only used once, that only needs to be used once. It's that little character moment that it's just it's good. That's all I can say. It's good. Like you mentioned, we had to go back and rewatch it a couple of times first to make sure that we were seeing it right, and then again just to appreciate it. And this movie was made on like a fifth of the budget. It was made for an estimated, I will clarify, budget of $900,000, or in today's money,
under $1 million.
In today's money it's $1,593,697.82.
I think one of the problems is that the budget for a story that was being told in the film wasn't going to cut it. I mean, they mentioned the aliens in this one. It's a very grand thing. It increases the scope, and we get a scene near the end demonstrating all the alien stuff, and that's about it. And it just feels like it shouldn't really be the focus of the film. It should be something in the background or only hinted at. But I appreciate their attempt to show the plot, but it just seems...
That's how it is in the original.
Really?
The plot in the original isn't the aliens. that's the backstory.
Well, no, it's more the fact that they try to cram in so much of the backstory into the sequel. It just feels like...
I appreciate that.
It just makes...
They do mention it in the original.
He talks about aliens near the end of the second film. Like, he's talking to the human characters about, oh yeah, aliens did it. It kind of diminishes the focus of the Guyver. It just makes him seem a little smaller.
I see. I completely disagree. I like that. I like, in a cosmic sense, everything that happens in the Guyver is completely unimportant because there's this massive war going on in space between powers way more powerful than us, and anything that happens on Earth, even when it involves the Zoa Lords, is completely insignificant and unimportant. I enjoy that. So that's probably just a personal taste thing, but I kind of like it. I think it gives it a more unique kind of identity for a story when even in its own universe, cosmically speaking, there is way more going on than any of them are able to comprehend or even observe, but are kind of aware of parts of it.
I'd agree with you fully on that if the aliens had more to do with the plot. So they weren't just, oh yeah, they created everything, then left it after their monkeys got loose.
I mean, they may well become more involved later on down the line, but the manga hasn't done anything for that yet that I've seen. I looked into it. There's nothing more. It's just it's explained what they did and what they're kind of doing, but they've not got any direct involvement anymore. I'm just impressed that they actually touched on the lore. You know, with these kind of adaptations, you wouldn't really expect them to.
It was a very ambitious sequel.
Yeah, I honestly think that it kind of achieved everything it set out to. The basic plot of it is fairly simple. David Hayter is now Sean Barker, and apparently liked the role so much that he used Sean Barker as a pseudonym for a bunch of other roles, and pitched a third. Yeah, he pitched a third film to Sean Wang. Not Sean Wang. Steve Wang.
Steve Wang.
Yes, names. He pitched a third movie to Steve Wang because, on top of being an accomplished voice actor, David Hayter is also an accomplished screenwriter. He did the screenplay for Watchmen and at least X-Men 2, maybe X-Men 1 as well.
Wow, I didn't know that.
But by that,
I thought he was just the voice of Snake.
No, he's done way more, my man.
Wow.
By that point, unfortunately, the rights had kind of defaulted back to the original rights holders, so they weren't able to make a third one. But it's nice that David Hayter kind of enjoys this role so much. And you can tell he put effort into this because Sean is way more engaging. So it starts with him basically being Ben Affleck's Daredevil, like hunting people down and killing them and then signing his name after each one. Like he uses his forehead beam laser to write the Guyver on the wall after he's done beating everyone to a pulp. It really is like that scene in Ben Affleck's Daredevil where he beats the guy up and kills him on the railway track and then writes DD in lighter fluid and someone can set it on fire later. That's a dumb movie.
That film definitely came out at the wrong time. Superhero films were still getting an idea of how they can be good.
I would say it came out at exactly the right time. Have you seen that movie lately? It is an absolute mess and I love it.
What's the series version of it like?
Dull. I watched seasons 1 and 2 and they were incredibly dull. Anything with the Punisher in season 2 was good, but other than that, the series is just kind of dull, which is unfortunate because I really like Daredevil. The Kingpin was decently done. That was the mini Spandex Power Armour review of Daredevil. It's kind of dull. So yeah, Sean Barker is plagued by like PTSD, psychic nightmares of pod-like ships and stuff like that. And then he sees on this weird tabloid conspiracy urban legend program that he watches a thing about a werewolf attack in Utah. And then he sees a copy of cave paintings that mirror what he's been drawing. So he hitchhikes over to the dig site in Utah and manages to talk his way onto the site by convincing the daughter of the guy in charge to let him tag along and sneak in. And I've got to say, Corey, the character I just mentioned, is way more interesting than Mizuki ever was, because she actually has dreams and ambitions and goals and a character.
For a female character?
Yeah.
Whoa. That's ahead of its time.
Like, she does get kidnapped, but she has more going on. Like, she and her father are these kind of ancient alien type archaeologists, and they've kind of been blacklisted from the academic community for it. And so she is determined to make this dig work and prove that they were right all along and stuff like that. And it's not the most complex motivations, but it is motivations. It is a goal that she has and that she works towards, and it makes her way more engaging.
Isn't that partly the premise of Young Gary as well, for that archaeologist lady?
I don't care. It could very well be, but I do not, cannot, and will not care. We have talked about that movie and never shall again.
Well, at least the aliens make more sense in Guyver Dark Hero.
Yes, they do. Because they don't even turn up.
Despite my opinions on the second Guyver film, on including all the alien stuff in it, to be honest, I have no complaints properly with this film. It's a good film, it's entertaining, it's got a structure that makes sense, it's got characters that are engaging, it's got action scenes that are fun, it's just there. It simply is. It's a good film. It's a decent adaptation of a manga, which is rare. It's a nice tokusatsu film. It's just quite obscure.
In the interest of being fair and balanced, my biggest complaint about this movie is the pacing is a bit off.
It starts out fairly slow.
Oh, it drags quite a lot in the middle, because you get no real action sequences. You get a lot of people just standing around or digging and talking about stuff, and it's like 2 hours long. It doesn't really need to be 2 hours long. They could probably cut a decent amount out of this movie without hurting it.
If I wanted to see David Hayter running around the woods all the time, I'd have just played Metal Gear Solid 3.
Unfortunately, this isn't Amazon's. We can't see him eat his monsters.
Now that would be cool.
I love how, canonically, Big Boss is the first person to find a Tsuchinoko, and then he eats it. I just want to play Metal Gear Solid 3 now.
I've still never played it, nor Peace Walker.
Ooh, I really like Peace Walker. It's definitely a PSP game, but it's fun. I like the story. The Hidden Boss has an anime theme song when you fight it.
Oh, cool.
When you look at it like that, Metal Gear Rising Revengeance really wasn't too far out of left field, was it?
Could never really get into Metal Gear stuff properly because, frankly, the plot was a bit silly. It didn't make sense. I know that Kojima sort of intentionally did it that way because he loves Western action movies, so based it all off that, but it's still just a little bit silly.
Yes, it's silly, but that's part of the appeal for me. I like the juxtaposition of this very grim, serious, expansive conspiracy thriller that is told through the lens of a goofy, silly action game, where one moment you can have someone getting horribly tortured, and in the other one, someone's complaining about diarrhea, and you can exploit that to escape your cell and stuff like that. Good old Johnny Sasaki.
Really?
Yeah, there is a recurring character in the Metal Gear games who becomes very important in the fourth one. His lineage, rather, is present. Johnny Sasaki and his forebears are plagued with IBS, and so their bowel movements are rather unfortunate for them. Like, you can come across a character in MGS3 who is Johnny's father, or maybe his grandfather, and you can use that to exploit your escape because he's on the toilet and he's doing something nasty. But then when you meet, you can meet Johnny in MGS1. He's the character who Meryl steals the uniform from. So when you break out of your cell and you see the guy, face down, naked, with his uniform stolen, that's Johnny Sasaki. And then he comes back in MGS4 and is incredibly important because he's one of the few people who hasn't been given the nanomachine injections because he's scared of needles, and so he's one of the few people who hasn't been affected by the Sons of the Patriot system and who hasn't been decommissioned and This joke character that never had a name or even a proper face becomes this important. It's I love Metal Gear so much.
That's a very unfortunate character.
Yes, yes. I'm impressed it took us this long in an episode that features David Hayter as a talking point for us to get locked into a Metal Gear tangent, but it happened. We held out longer than I thought we would.
Yeah, especially, well, if he were in the first film, we would have made a lot more Metal Gear references.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It would probably be one of the first things we mentioned. But if he were in the first film, it would probably be more engaging because he is a much better actor. It's good. It's got a lot of decent elements. Mizuki is briefly seen at the beginning, and you get the sense that she's actually kind of scared of Sean because he started becoming this kind of vigilante by night. And then later on, when he kind of transforms and fights monsters to defend Corey, initially she's kind of scared of him as well. And those are quite decent moments. They're exactly the kind of thing I like, where you've got this tragic hero who is feared almost by the people he saves just as much as the monsters he kills. I like that kind of thing. They introduce some elements from the manga, but don't directly adapt them. So they take the Mount Minakami arc of the original and then adapt bits from that. So in that bit, the boys, the team, come across a mountain that is a secret Kronos base of operations and is built around a spaceship, exactly like the one in this film. And they kind of infiltrate the lower levels and meet up with a resistance kind of movement within Kronos and kind of team up with them. And you also see cave paintings that feature Guyver's 0, 1, 2, and 3. You only see Guyver 1 and a kind of adaptation of Guyver 2, because Crane, the main villain who we mentioned being the smirking Zoanoid, that's not all there is to him. But he receives a damaged Guyver unit from the ship and equips it, and it turns him into the Guyver Zoanoid, which isn't in the original, but it is amazing.
It's a beautiful suit. It looks so cool.
It is fantastic. This Crane character is more Liska than Liska is in the original, because he's this kind of overseer from Kronos who uses a damaged Guyver unit and is eventually consumed by it. Liska doesn't really do much in the manga. I know that much. Liska only turns up for like one fight and then he's killed. In the anime, he's there for much longer to create like this kind of initial rival for our hero until Guyver 3 turns up.
Ooh.
In fact, actually, I'd like to take this moment to say that while Guyver was heavily inspired by tokusatsu of the 80s, mostly Kamen Rider, it actually predicted and did a lot of tropes that Kamen Rider would come to use first.
Ooh, do tell.
So a secondary rider wasn't so much of a thing. We had Riderman and Tackle, but Riderman was introduced like 15 episodes from the end, and Tackle isn't so much like a secondary rider. She's just like an equal partner. She isn't even classified as a Kamen Rider, even though she meets all the requirements for it. I will not stop pushing this issue. She is absolutely a Kamen Rider. So Guyver 3 is introduced as a kind of sort of rival ally type who later becomes a villain. He's only allied with the heroes out of pragmatism and completely hides his evil intentions because he wants to take over the world as well. But he also wants to beat Kronos because they have currently taken over the world. You've got villains. Okay. You've got someone defecting from the villain side and becoming one of the heroes and fighting alongside them. That's not at all a unique plot, but in this kind of context, in the way that it is done with Aptom, it's quite Kamen Rider-y. I'm explaining this horribly. I started out pretty decently. Watch Guyver. The 2005 anime is fine. It was made in a time where digital anime was first starting and they hadn't quite gotten it down how to make it look great. So it looks a bit flat, like early 2000s anime tends to. But in terms of story, it's fine. So just watch that and you'll understand.
I'm going to kind of argue with that in that I really don't like the dependence on 3D elements in modern anime.
I agree with you on paper. I say this to you a lot, I think. Yes, if you're talking about just like cars in the background, then yeah, I get you. But I do think that it's a necessary evil, because 3D anime is the future. Maybe not exclusively, but it is going to be a much bigger factor in anime going forwards. And so we need to stop throwing a fit whenever they introduce cel-shaded CGI in anime, because they need to get good at doing it.
I just didn't like it that much. Like with the Ultraman series on Netflix, it's just so
Yes.
it's got such a low frame rate that it just looks a bit naff. I'm just thinking,
But compare that to Beastars, and this is exactly why I say that we need to let them use 3D anime. Because yes, Ultraman and Inuyashiki look really bad, but Beastars looks really, really good. And so we need them to learn how to do that really, really good more often, if you see what I mean.
so you're kind of like playing the long game. You're waiting for it to get commonly very good.
Like I said, digitally painted anime looked really flat, boring, dull, and just not great to begin with. But now you get some really beautiful ones. Like I said, if you look at any clip from Guyver, the 2005 series, it's fine, but it's very flat and unengaging. Compare that to a Makoto Shinkai movie, where the digital animation is amazing, especially the backgrounds. You'll see what I mean? You need them to cut their teeth on things early on, so you can get masterpieces later, which is why I'm completely pro 3D elements in anime. Because you don't want them to spend all... I mean, like the Space Battleship Yamato anime I've been watching, the recent one, all the ships, all the weapons and stuff, like all the big super weapons and spaceships and fighters, they're all CGI. Because there is absolutely no way that you can reliably animate something that detailed uniquely all the time. If you make it a 3D model that you can move around, it frees up some time and processing power for animating the 2D things, like the characters that actually matter. It's nice when I get these moments to prove that I'm not some kind of Puritan stuck in the past, you know? I can be forward-thinking sometimes as well.
Yeah, you're not an unreasonable weeb.
Wow, that was a big old tangent. You should let me talk about anime more.
Look, this is a
explosions in
tokusatsu
it and
podcast, not
superheroes.
anime. Keep your Chinese cartoons out of it.
But my Mongolian woodcuts.
4chan has corrupted you.
The Guyver 2 Dark Hero or Guyver Dark Hero or Guyver 2, it's been given
Electric
a few names,
Boogaloo.
actually. Guyver 2 Electric Boogaloo.
Well,
no,
that's...
Guyver 2 Bio Boosted Boogaloo.
The problem with that gag, though, is that Electric Boogaloo connotes a sequel that's unnecessary. I mean, it's a very good sequel.
Yeah, the prequel was unnecessary. This is the main one. If you want... Yeah, to boil down my basic feelings on this, and this is basically my whole review condensed as much as I can. Watch Guyver 2 if you want a good Guyver movie. Watch Guyver 1 if you like Brian Usner stuff and just want to see Jeffrey Combs' cameo, I guess. If you're a Guyver fan, watch Guyver 2.
Do it for Jeffrey.
What I'm saying. I mean, that's basically the most succinct way I can explain my feelings on this. Guyver 2 is genuinely a good tokusatsu movie. It is a fantastic adaptation and localization of a manga. It's shocking that Guyver got that. Guyver 1 is a curiosity, and you should be viewed as such. You shouldn't sit down to watch Guyver 1 expecting to have a fulfilling experience unless you're watching it as a curiosity.
It seems like something that you'd show to a friend to say, oh yeah, they made a live-action version of this manga. It was a little awkward in parts. You could tell if it was put in, but it is very much a curiosity, as you said.
I mean, they're both worth checking out. Arrow has a very good release of Guyver 1. It's got Blu-ray and DVD. It's not got very many special features, but it looks nice. It's a decent set, and it's not that expensive. Guyver 2 has not had a recent release for ages, but you can track down old DVDs of it for dead cheap. I got mine for like £5 on Amazon. No one but me really loves this movie, apparently. Guyver gets no love. There are some old Figmas for it, and I really want one, but they're super expensive. But I really want one. Same with that Gauss Figma I found. It looks really good, but it's super expensive, and I can't justify spending that much money on a Figma.
Have you tried selling a kidney?
Look, I'm on permanent dialysis. You've seen some of the figures I've got.
Dude, lungs, dude.
Ah, sick. Yeah, I could do that. You can live on one lung.
You're just going to need to carry around a hand pump the whole time.
Some bellows.
Yes. Actually, that was already a Whitest Kid You Know sketch.
Was it?
Yeah. Well, it's along the same vein. It was the guy who was bitten by the shark and got shark superpowers. But he's just a torso now. And he has to manually pump his lungs.
I think I remember. I haven't seen the Whitest Kids You Know in so long.
Oh, it'll probably be uploaded to YouTube at some point. Ever since Trevor Moore started doing his little web show thing, that then turned into webcam chats with every member of the group. And what they do now is they have a YouTube video where they discuss specific sketches, and then they also upload HD versions of those sketches, which is great because we're finally getting everything in HD. I can see Sex Robot in 1080p. I'm happy.
Little mini review. Watch the Whitest Kids You Know. They're amazing.
Yes.
I'm so glad they're all friends still. So now it's time for my second go on Get Me Into It.
So, what are you getting me into now? Is it a cult?
Potentially, yes.
Ooh, yay! Anything else I need to do? Do I need to shave my face or get a tattoo or something? Change my name to Screaming Mad Rex?
Well, I need you to go down to the subway. You'll find a plastic bag left there. I need you to stab it with an umbrella and then leave. No, this time I'm trying to get you into... I mean, technically, you've already done a bit of it, but I'm going to convince you to get back into or continue Yakuza.
Oh yeah.
So I checked out. I checked your Steam profile. You've only played like 6 hours of Yakuza Kiwami. You need to play more, my man. Get into it. Immerse yourself in it.
You've been stalking my Steam profile.
Yes, because I planned this. I specifically intended to choose Yakuza as this week's Get Me Into It for me, and I wanted to be precise. So yeah, like 6 hours you've played of it. That's nothing. You can waste lifetime.
This is just turning into you roasting me for not properly playing Yakuza.
Yeah.
Great. This is what happened last time I tore into you for you never having read Pratchett. And so, yeah, I guess this is my comeuppance.
Yes, it is. This is what you get. I mean, you play part of the original. Damn it, the remake of the first Yakuza game. You know what it's about, basically. So I don't do the groundwork too much on that. But for the benefit of the people listening at home, Yakuza is a very serious crime drama. You play as Kazuma Kiryu, the Dragon of Dojima, a legendary Yakuza enforcer who never quite got the memo on what Yakuza do. I am convinced that Kiryu is developmentally stunted. I don't think he's progressed past age 16 or so, because he still thinks that the Yakuza are this kind of honourable modern-day Ronin outlaw types, you know? And doesn't quite get that he's actually meant to be, involved in a lot of shady stuff. And to be fair, he hasn't been Yakuza since like the beginning, maybe partway through the middle of Yakuza 1. After that, he's just Yakuza adjacent. He just keeps getting dragged back into it. And the title of this series in Japanese isn't even Yakuza, it's Yuga Gotoku, or Like a Dragon.
That makes a lot more sense, but I guess since we discussed applying things to Western audiences, Yakuza would make a little more sense to communicate the setting to them.
Yeah, it kind of keys you into what the dealio is a bit more quickly than Like a Dragon, especially since Western sensibilities and Eastern ones differ quite a bit when it comes to dragons. We slay dragons over here. Over in the East, they're more revered and respected. Yeah, no, Yakuza, it's really good. You should play more. You've got it on Steam. You can. Yakuza has never been more plentifully accessible than it is now. Everything is on PS4. I know you don't have that.
There's Kiwami 2, there's 0. Any more that are PC based?
So basically, you can play all the mainline ones now on PS4. They are all, as far as I'm aware, coming out on PC afterwards as well. So you've got the first two Kiwamis and 0 on PC, like you said. You can absolutely, but by the time you get through those, the remastered trilogy of 3, 4, and 5 would probably come out. Surprised it didn't bring 6 out, actually.
Wow.
But, it's a long running series. You'll have plenty to keep you engaged with it. The characters are just fantastic. Once
It
you
doesn't
play
so much
Kiwami,
get me
you should
into
play
it. It's
Zero.
more you just saying, for the love of God, play Yakuza so we can talk about Yakuza stuff.
Yeah, I really want to talk about Yakuza. I can talk to Jack, our friend Jack, about Yakuza, but I think he's only played like the first game, or maybe he's played a bit of Zero. I'll have to check. But he's not played as much as I have, and even then, I've not played that much. I'm still going through 3 at the moment. There's a lot to do in Yakuza games.
Don't worry,
There's a
he's
lot of
read the
side
TV
content.
tropes page for Yakuza, I'm certain.
This is an inside joke of ours that no one else will get.
We love you, Jack, but for the love of God,
We're
stop
calling
looking
you
at-
out, Jack.
Stop looking at spoilers on TV tropes. Just enjoy consuming product.
And then get excited for new product.
Yes. Anyway, back to the MCU.
No, yes, absolutely play more Yakuza. You have the opportunity. It will cost you nothing.
What was I doing in Yakuza? I'm at that point now where I'm in the sandbox, and I don't really want to do anything that precedes the plot. I want to get all the side stuff done. So I've just discovered the cars, well, the little slot... What's the term? Slot cars?
Yeah, slot car racing.
Yeah,
You got
slot car
Pocket
racing, and also I've been avoiding a lot of Majima encounters. I'm like, oh god, because I'm just too weak right now.
You need to do your Majima everywhere. You need to do that.
I do try, but sometimes I've just got so little health. I'm like, nope.
What you need to do is you need to empty your inventory and just fill it up with healing items.
I do. It is a good game. I do enjoy the combat. The only reason for me having not played it was... Actually, when did you get me that game?
Did I get you that?
No, is it you or Jack? I know, I'm going to scroll down to my Steam library right now. Yakuza.
It sounds like the kind of thing I would have got you.
Oh, hey, it's still actually installed. June 1st, 2019. Wow.
Dude.
Yeah, birthday present.
Finish
kind of
it.
thing. I'd sort of argue that I was depressed during that period. I was still getting off a breakup, so yeah, I'll return to it.
I'm depressed right now. What's your excuse?
I am playing The Surge 2. I've got cyborgs to decapitate. So, this concludes our very special episode. The Guyver, yeah, it's obscure enough for the first film to be a cute little curio, and the second film is surprisingly good. If you want a perfect example of a tokusatsu adaptation of manga, a Western one at that, done right, I would recommend watching it. The suit design is amazing, even for the early 90s.
It's shocking how good it is and how accurate it is. I would go so far as to say it was peng.
Peng. That term went out of style years ago.
I only found it recently. I was young once.
Okay, boomer.
But yeah, no, damn it, I'm still on Yakuza.
You're in Yakuza mode.
Hold on, I'm going to shift into Yakuza mode.
What are your thoughts on the Guyver, listeners? Are you moderately interested in it? Have you watched it? Are you aware of the source material? Do you have any strong thoughts for or against it? We'd like to know. We're genuinely curious, because this is one of the things that is rare enough that you'd barely find anyone in certain communities who knows of it. So please, tell us your opinions. You can reach us via Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and we need to come up with some more things for people to bother us on. We could try an Instagram.
Tumblr.
OnlyFans. We'll make an
Yes.
OnlyFans. We'll have to figure out which specific fetish we need to cater to. Spandex. Right.
Just get some kigurumis in, just wear those.
Only if we get to wear the doll heads. My favourite part is disgusting you.
You got cold eyes, like a kigurumi's eyes.
I'd watch Jaws, but it's every scene with the shark is replaced by something like that.
Oh, that would make the movie so much better. Just that one change. Just that one little change.
You just get a very wet person.
Dead eyes, like a Funko Pop's eyes. Funnily enough, I think you can actually get a Jaws Funko Pop when Will This End.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Well, we all know that Funko Pops will be with us forever and will never end. Unlike this podcast, which is ending right now. Again, please tell us your thoughts on the Guyver. This is Rex, signing out. I used to have a catchphrase, but I don't have one anymore, because I'm cool now.
Yeah, we're above that lame stuff. Branding, what's that? Catch you on the flip side, suckers. That's my new catchphrase.